Right now, right now. 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 Oh, I got a real good feeling.
We try to bring you high-quality educational and informational content every single day. Why do you think the price is having such an anemic time? The news story of the hour. Jump onto the chart. Is this the beginning of a massive financial unraveling? We got to add a little addendum to the show map today. So we start here on the daily. Now, we've been looking at the RSI on Bitcoin's daily chart for the last several days. It always has been, but it's been increasing over the last 50 years since the government has been bigger. Hey guys, what's going on? Jeb here, and welcome back to Coffee and Crypto Live. This is your weekdaily morning show where hang on a second. We got to have a different intro. This is your emergency report. I need some klaxons flaring behind me. Need an air raid siren. This is war. War has been declared on cryptocurrency by Gary Gensler's Securities and Exchange Commission. As of yesterday, Binance was sued on 13 charges, including operating an unregistered securities operation, broker dealing violations, and by listing 10 different cryptocurrencies, in fact, 12 different cryptocurrencies that the SEC now considers securities. About an hour ago, during the planning of this live stream, a second lawsuit with the exact same title and a different name came out. And this time, the SEC is filing suit against Coinbase. The entire cryptocurrency market has dropped by tens of billions of dollars. And in today's episode of Coffee and Crypto Live, we're going to break down what happened, why the SEC is doing this. We're going to explain how this has impacted Bitcoin and where Bitcoin will go next. To start off, we need to remember the vision of cryptocurrency. The vision of cryptocurrency goes back to financial sovereignty, and that is the point of this channel. And that is the goal that we've been reaching for every single day here since we began this channel on November 16th, 2017. I'm very excited to share with you the vision of financial sovereignty because, in my opinion, I think it perfectly encapsulates what Satoshi Nakamoto was attempting to do when he first created Bitcoin. Bitcoin is designed to be a decentralized, autonomous, and pseudonymous currency that allows for the people to have control over their finances, over their storage of wealth into the future, and against control of authoritarian governments such as the Securities and Exchange Commission and the United States federal government. Ever since I stepped into the cryptocurrency space, I always knew, and I think you probably did too, that Bitcoin would always be public enemy number one against what the government wants. The United States federal government has one tool at its disposal that is more powerful than all others, and no, it is not its nuclear arsenal. No, it is not its military or the new Gerald R. Ford class nuclear carriers. It's not the M1 Abrams tank. It's not the F-35 Lightning. It's not any kind of piece of military hardware. It is the United States dollar being the world reserve currency. That is the most powerful weapon that the United States, the most powerful country on planet Earth, wields by a country mile. It is absolutely the most powerful currency on the planet. It always has been the most powerful currency on the planet ever since the end of the Second World War, and is absolutely the strongest weapon that the United States government wields. Ever since the inception of Bitcoin, that power has been under threat. It's maybe not a threat to Bitcoin, to the United States' world reserve currency status, but it is a threat to the culture that has allowed for the United States dollar to be world reserve currency status. You see, Bitcoin champions an idea of financial sovereignty in that you have control over your own finances, which then leads you to wanting to have control over your money so that your money doesn't control you. It leads you to a lifestyle where you're not going to run a massive deficit. It leads you to a lifestyle where you're not going to rely on credit cards and on debt payments. It leads you to a lifestyle where you're going to have some degree of security over your money where others can't come in and hack and steal it. It leads you to a lifestyle of realizing that our command in Genesis chapter 1, verse 28, to subdue the world and have dominion over it is a biblical commandment. And one of the things that the Bitcoin market helps us to do is do just that. It helps for us to have control over our finances rather than them having control over us. It helps for the individual to have control over their own destiny rather than the government who's trying to play God. And that's exactly exactly what we're dealing with right now. Make no mistake, this is an attack on cryptocurrency in the format of a cultural war. This has nothing to do with Changpeng Zhao. This has nothing to do with Binance. This has nothing to do with Brian Armstrong or Coinbase. This has everything to do with the United States government realizing that there is power in this concept of digital currencies. This has everything to do with their desire to build a central bank digital currency, which could be coming out in just the next 2 years, if not even sooner. This has everything to do with FedNow, and this has everything to do with the United States government attempting to ensure that they are the ones on the technological bleeding edge so that the vast majority of the population who doesn't know any better will go with the government's option, the CBDC that they want to roll out, rather than Bitcoin, because if the United States does not hold on to the power that the US dollar gives it, then it has nothing. We spend $850 billion a year on military. We spend billions of dollars a year on our nuclear arsenal. That is funded by the United States dollar. Those dollars are only as valuable as they are to be able to buy as much military hardware as they do, because they represent the most powerful form of, most powerful means of exchange that humankind has ever known. And if any part of that system comes under threat, you had better believe that the United States government can rally around one thing: defense. You can't get the government to agree on anything. You can't get the Congress to agree that the sky is blue. But when Pearl Harbor was attacked, there was only one person in Congress, House or Senate, that voted not to declare war on the nation of Japan. You can unite a nation that is never united when a national defense issue comes up, and the United States sees Bitcoin as a threat to the national defense of their country because it is a threat to the hegemony of the United States dollar. But the problem is the United States never should have had that much power over the currency in the first place. And that's what this is about. Today, we're going to talk about what happened. We're going to talk about why this is happening, and we're going to talk about how this has impacted Bitcoin and how it will continue. Let's go ahead and read chat. Really appreciate all of you guys tuning in. If you are new here, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit that post notification bell, because we are talking about financial sovereignty every single day. And this perhaps is one of the most important days that we discuss it in the entire 13-year history of this industry. Let's go ahead and read some chat. All right, Wisely T is in chat. Says, of course, when I finally accumulate a whole Bitcoin, it crashes despite the Lux Algo buy signal on the daily. Yeah, Lux Algo couldn't have predicted that the SEC was going to come out strong like this. I was concerned that it would. If you guys remember, I've told you plenty of times that the reason I don't invest in Binance is because it's probably going to get labeled a security one day, and the SEC is probably going to come after it. I'm not saying they should. I'm just saying it's a fact that it was a very strong opinion that it probably would. Got Sean O'Brien in chat, Rick4962 in chat, Sean Galt, bullish bull. I warned you Bitcoin crash due to treasury market like Noah warned about the flood. Yes, the treasury market is having an impact on this. We talked about that yesterday and during office hours last night. DJ Flexa said SEC biting off way more than it can chew now, running into election season before Gensler gets the oust. Yes, it is very possible that Gensler is simply attempting to open up as many cans of worms as he can so that his successor, whoever it may be, will have to do something with them. They can't unopen the can of worms. They can't reclose Pandora's box. So it seems that he may be trying to make as big of an impact as he possibly can. Shadrach Frost in chat said, woohoo! Good morning, Jeb in chat. Good morning to you as well. All right. Grand Roofing Incorporated in chat, Rick4962. Let's see. Really appreciate all of you guys tuning in. Really excited for today's show. Really excited for everything that's going on in our life. Our daughter is 8 weeks old today, which means my wife's 8 weeks postpartum. We hit the gym this morning, hit some bench, hit some chest flies, did some tricep work. Really excited to be here on stream. Feeling pumped. So excited to jump into it. Let's start off with one of my favorite people in the cryptocurrency industry, because I think he really gets it when it comes to the cultural war that Bitcoin is a part of, and his name is Charles Hoskinson. We've actually had him on the channel before. I had the great pleasure of speaking on some of these issues with him on our channel, and he posted a tweet yesterday at 2 p.m. that I think encapsulates what we're dealing with here quite well. I'm going to read the entire thing because I think it will be a great foundation upon which we can build our entire thesis today. Charles Hoskinson, founder of Cardano, tweeted this yesterday. With respect to Binance, I'm reading through the SEC complaint. It's over 130 pages, but it seems like the next in a series of steps to implement Choke Point 2.0 in the United States. The end goal is an agenda-based CBDC partner with a handful of massive banks and end-to-end control over every aspect of your financial life. A regulatory event is where you have a debate about compliance with a law or guide. This event seems to be a politically philosophical disagreement with the very existence of cryptocurrencies and what they represent. An unelected group of people have decided that concepts like self-sovereign identity, owning your own wallet, and the freedom to control your economic agency should be removed from the masses and given to the enlightened few, quote unquote. Honestly, what is happening isn't anything new. It's always been the same fight between freedom and authoritarianism, just with different players, technology, and words. It does seem like this event is a perfect opportunity for the entire industry to set aside its fragmented nature and unite for a common sense of rules and guidelines that can prevent the United States from slipping into a dystopia that would make 1984 look like a vacation. I'll have more to say later, etc., etc., etc. Moving on to another video. This actually came out a few months ago. This is by a big inspiration of mine, Patrick Bet-David over at Valuetainment. I would highly encourage you to watch this video. Not gonna play it right now, but you definitely should go watch this. This is a video titled "The Dark Side of CBDC Explained." Make sure you go and check that out. Patrick's got a great breakdown of what CBDCs are, the number of countries that are working on them, how 18 out of 20 G20 countries are working on CBDCs, the United States being one of them. China wants to roll one out this year. There's a lot of movement in the CBDC environment. In fact, there's over a dozen countries that have formally adopted a CBDC at this point. The United States definitely wants to be on that technological edge, and the United States definitely wants to be leading that charge. So those are just a couple of resources that you can go to see more about what I'm talking about the cultural war that's going on here. We're going to talk about the particulars of the allegations, and some of the allegations should be brought to light. What is being alleged, we should know whether that's happening or not. But I don't know of any evidence to say that those things are happening. They might be. I do not work at Binance. I'm not a senior executive at Binance. I couldn't tell you. So, starting the culture war that we're dealing with right now is that the SEC wants to crack down on cryptocurrencies because they know that a CBDC is coming from the United States federal government, and Gary Gensler believes that his agency should be the one in charge of this problem industry, this troublesome 13 colonies that need to just pay their taxes and get under control. Gary Gensler starting to look very much like the King of England. All right, let's go ahead and break down the market just for a second, starting over on CoinMarketCap. Bitcoin, surprisingly, is trading at $25,961. I think the thing to realize here is that despite all of the flux that we've seen over the last 24 hours, from Binance getting sued to now just 2 hours ago, Coinbase coming under litigation, the Bitcoin and cryptocurrency market has managed to hold. The drop that we witnessed looks nothing more than a normal correction, despite the most powerful regulatory agency that can and would attack Bitcoin launching a full frontal nuclear onslaught against this industry. We have seen a huge attack on crypto. Bitcoin has dropped 5.5%. Big whoop. Let's talk about the other altcoins that are implicated in this, because let's pause, read this article over on Blockworks. I got an article for you here. SEC labels 10 token securities in the Binance lawsuit. This came out yesterday. There may be more in the Coinbase lawsuit. I haven't had a chance to read it yet. It's going to be over 100 pages. It just dropped like an hour ago, but I would imagine they're listing even more over there. In the actual SEC lawsuit, and I couldn't find the SEC lawsuit again, but it's on page 85. I found it last night. If you can find it, it's on page 85 of the actual lawsuit. It's 130 pages, is what Charles Hoskinson was referring to. See if I can find it really quickly here. No, I don't think I can. If you can find it, it's on page 85 of the lawsuit. But on page 85, they list 10 different cryptocurrencies outside of Binance token, outside of BNB, and outside of BUSD. As securities. In federal court documents, that being the document I'm trying to, maybe this is it right here. Let's see if this is it. Nope. Okay. Sorry. You guys might have to find that on your own, or I can find it later. In federal court documents, the SEC deemed the following tokens as securities: Solana, Cardano, Matic, FIL, Atom, Sand, Mana, Algo, AXS, and Cody. The SEC refers to these 10 tokens and others as crypto asset securities in its complaint. Maybe I can find the complaint right here. Ah, I found it. All right. We got to scroll all the way down to page 85, and I'll show you the actual complaint. I will show you in the actual document what I'm talking about. Page 85, it's right here, section 352. Since the Binance platform launched, defendants have made available for trading on them crypto assets that are offered and sold as investment contracts and thus as securities. This includes, but is not limited to, BNB, BUSD, and the units of each of the crypto asset securities further described below with trading symbols Sol, ADA, Matic, File, Atom, Sand, Mana, Algo, AXS, and Cody, collectively the crypto security assets. crypto asset securities. And then they go on for the next 20 pages defining each of these cryptocurrencies and why they're being traded, why they're being considered securities. So let's kind of break that down. That's one of the major charges that the SEC is bringing against Binance and also against Coinbase. They are bringing these allegations that they are listing securities. So let's break that down from two aspects. Number one, what is the law? Is there any precedent that these cryptocurrencies are labeled as securities? The only example that I can find anywhere that I'm aware of, and you can tell me if you know something that I don't, the only precedent, the only statement from a regulator, which is not law, but they're treating it like it, the only regulation or anything that I can find that would deem these as securities is one statement, maybe about two actually, that Gary Gensler said several months ago, him being the chairman of the Securities and Exchange Commission, that everything except for Bitcoin is a security. So that is as much as we can find, is that the SEC's chairman, Gary Gensler, said that everything but Bitcoin is a security. So I ask you the question, the United States citizens in this audience, and also the citizens of the rest of the world, because you're probably going to have to deal with this with your own national governments as well. Is Gary Gensler the king of this nation? Is Gary Gensler's word law? Is that the way it works in this country now? Because I remember standing for a Pledge of Allegiance where I pledged allegiance to a flag, not a man, because this country is not represented by one man except God, is one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do those words not mean anything to us anymore? At this point in time, is one regulator's single sentence so powerful that if a exchange does not shut down business operations worth billions because they don't subscribe to the one sentence that someone like Gary Gensler says, should a lawsuit be filed against them for that? Should they be brought to heel? A multi-billion-dollar company with tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of customers, thousands of employees, hugely profitable for the United States economy, by the way, massively profitable company. Should they be brought to heel because they didn't subscribe, they didn't follow that one statement? Who is Gary Gensler? King Louis XIV? Who is Gary Gensler, the King of England? You know, let me just tell you a bit of a story about the kind of country that we're founded in. By the way, before you say it, there are plenty of mistakes that this country has made. Not perfect. Slavery, civil rights issue. There's all kinds of mistakes that the United States has made. But let me tell you a story about the man that helped to lead this and was put in the leadership position, George Washington. George Washington led the Continental Army against the armies of England. At Fort Sumter, the flag stood, and the entire British Armada opened up on the single United States flag flying over Fort Sumter, and it stayed there. If you've ever heard the song, The Star-Spangled Banner, but our flag was still there. You know why that flag was still there? Go read this history. You know why that flag was still there? Because there were patriots that believed enough in this country and believed enough in the freedom from tyranny that it represented, that when those cannonballs were fired against that flag, they went and held that flag up with their dying bodies. That flag stood not because it was on a flagpole, but because it was standing on the bodies of men that believed in this country. And there are so many mistakes that it's made. I'm not saying it's perfect. It is not the gospel. It is not God. Christ is the only thing that's perfect. Not in any way trying to defend any of the mistakes that this country has made at all. But it was founded on freedom. It was founded on freedom from tyranny. And we've walked away from it. We've walked straight into authoritarianism, and we don't even realize it. That's why Bitcoin matters so much, guys. We founded this country because we didn't want to be under the thumb of an authoritarian despot who says one sentence, and if you don't follow it, then you better be brought to heel. And people believed so strongly in that they were willing to die to make sure that flag didn't touch the ground. That's how powerful the motivation was. That's how powerfully they felt about what the country was fighting for. That's how important it is that we do not put kings and regulators in God's place. And that's what our country wants to do. That's what Gary Gensler seems to want to be. He seems to want to be someone that can say a word and it is law. George Washington, the leader of that army, of those men that held that flag high, was offered the kingship. Go study the history on this. This isn't taught in schools anymore. He was offered the kingship. He was revered so much that many of the people that fought to free us from a king believed in him so much, believed so strongly in George Washington as the man. A sinful man, made mistakes, not the Messiah. But they believed so strongly in that man, they offered him the crown. And if he had said yes, we'd be living in a kingdom right now. Not only did he say no, because he believed in what the country was being founded on, he also refused to serve more than 2 terms. Because he didn't want to be king by action and not just not king by title. That is what our country was founded on. And oh, how we've strayed away from it. So what is the SEC trying to do right now? The SEC is trying to rein in the cryptocurrency space the exact same way that England was trying to rein in those 13 colonies that would later become the great country of the United States. And we, for some reason, call it complacency, call it decadency, call it wealth, call it greed, call it sin, call it whatever you want, seem to have forgotten a lot of those principles. But not everyone has. There are plenty of people in this country that realize, there are plenty of people in this world that realize that freedom from an authoritarian government is very important. Freedom can be a dangerous thing because freedom can allow you to do something stupid. When I turned 18, I'll tell you how many dumb mistakes I made because I had the freedom to go and do them, right? Sleeping until noon, eating a bunch of junk. Freedom can be a bad thing, but freedom from government is not, because the government is not God, and it forgets that quite often. The SEC is launching a war on cryptocurrency because they see it as a threat to the hegemony of the United States dollar. Coinbase and Binance are simply roadblocks in their way. However, I think it's funny that in these court documents, 2 cryptocurrencies were not listed. At least not in the Binance document. Again, we haven't had time to see the Coinbase document. 2 documents were not cryptocurrencies were not listed. Bitcoin and Ethereum. Bitcoin and ETH were not listed. Of course, Ethereum and Bitcoin are trading on Binance. They weren't listed as securities. I think the reason for that is because the SEC realizes that this is a war, this is a fight, that they're going to have to this is not going to be a pushover. This is not going to be a boom, lawsuit, done, shut them down, kick them out of the country. They can operate internationally if they want, but they're not doing business here. It's not going to be that simple. And so I don't know if the SEC was ready to go after Ethereum, and the SEC I don't think is ready to go after Bitcoin because it definitely wouldn't pass the Howey test. What's going on here is that the Securities and Exchange Commission is attacking 2 things. Number one, it's attacking the idea that Coinbase and Binance are offering unregistered securities, because none of these are registered securities because they're not securities. Number 2, they're attacking the actual business structure. So I have a document over here. I think it's in the New York Times. Let's see. I believe I have it right here. No. Oh, I apologize. It's on CNBC. So one of the issues that the SEC brings up is that Zhao owns Binance and Binance US, and he basically says that Zhao works with Binance and works with Binance US, and that the CEOs of Binance US don't actually have any real power over the company. Let me just show you the ownership chart here that CNBC showed. Changpeng Zhao owns 100% of Binance Holdings Limited, which owns the Binance brand, Binance.com. Zhao also owns CPZ Holdings Limited, 100% of which owns 100% of BAM Management Company Limited, which owns 81% of BAM Management US Holdings Incorporated, which owns 100% of Trading Services Inc., which owns Binance US. So one of the concerns, and this is from CEO A and CEO B, is what the documents list them as. Those are probably the first 2 CEOs of Binance US going back a few years. They both came out and said, we're technically the CEO of the company, but it doesn't really feel like we have a whole lot of control. I wonder why. It feels like you don't actually have that much control of the company, even though you're the CEO. Maybe because there's a majority shareholder involved. When there's a majority shareholder involved of a company, the CEO is a glorified assistant. When you have a majority owner of the company, they're the one that is setting the vision and the direction of the company. When you're a CEO of a company that has fractional ownership and there's 100,000 owners and nobody owns more than 5%, you got the board, and the board will tell you what to do. But when there's a majority owner, Changpeng Zhao, he owns 81%. He is the board. He can make any unilateral decision he wants. That's the way business works. Of course, you're going to feel like you don't have a whole lot of control over the general direction. You are a glorified COO. You may be called CEO in title, but you are a chief operating officer. You are second in command behind the owner of the company. That's the way business works, and these CEOs seem to want to complain about it. Now, I'm not here to say that Binance is scot-free. There are allegations of commingling of investor capital There was one allegation about them raising money and then using it to buy an $11 million yacht. Listen, first and foremost, businesses that are worth that have $60 billion in value, they buy yachts. That's what they do. You can complain about that all day long, but SEC, you can go right after all the big banks because those guys have a lot of yachts. The fact of the matter is, Binance is probably not a perfectly run company. Binance probably does subvert its own corporate controls at times, and that, if it's happening, needs to stop. I am not here to say that an investigation into Binance is not a good thing, because it actually should happen. Hear me here, and hear me very clearly here. Please don't take this out of context. There should be some degree of investigation into Binance, and there should be some degree of investigation into Coinbase. You know why? Because of FTX. When FTX collapsed, that put all of us on guard. There's a book that was written 30 years ago. It's called Only the Paranoid Survive. There is a certain degree of paranoia that you should have around those that have anything to do with your money. I met somebody when our daughter was 7 days old. We were in the hospital. We had to go back to the hospital because my wife was, postpartum stuff. Her name was Sonia. And she showed me some stuff, and I was like, man, there needs to be some accountability here. I'm not going to go into too many details because since I said her name, I'm not going to give too many details. But there needs to be some accountability there. And financially, there needs to be some accountability there. And so when we're talking about the government's job is to hold companies accountable. There is a certain degree of accountability that's there. That the government does have some authority. Accountability is part of the government's job. That is part of a father's job. That is part of a church, of a pastor's job. That's part of a CEO's job to his employees to hold accountable. There is a certain degree of that should be done. I'm actually not against a limited investigation, a cooperative investigation in Binance and Coinbase. I'm actually not against that so long as it's not politically motivated. The concern that I have here is that I think this is completely and totally politically motivated. So let's use that to kind of transition into our second topic here. Why is the SEC doing this? I've already touched on this quite extensively. The reason the SEC is doing this is very simple. Gary Gensler wants to go down in history for something. Shutting down an entire industry will do that. You know, there are people. Think about Nero. Why is Nero famous? Who knows Nero? Who knows the guy that, you know, what was it? Sang outside the city as Rome burned. Nero the emperor. This guy is evil. You know, he's the one of the Roman emperors that everybody hated. Went down in history as like the anti-hero. You know, why do people commit, you know, horrible acts of heinous crime that'll show up on national television? Because they want to be famous. Now, Gary Gensler is not committing any heinous crimes here. I don't want to conflate him with Nero or somebody that's doing that. Dude's not a murderer. He's not any of that. I'm not trying to conflate him with that. I'm just saying, why do people sometimes do things that are not good? Sometimes it's because they want attention and they want to go down in history for it. I don't know if Gary Gensler really believes everything he's doing. Maybe he does. And if he does, here's the other problem. The banks in the United States don't have founders, they don't have majority shareholders, and they don't have CEOs. They are owned by their boards. Those boards are major investors, and those banks mostly answer to the government because the government is the one that's going to bail them out. The government is the one that sets the rates. The government is the one that helps them with overnight banking transfers. The government is the one that gives them all the rules to operate by. Those banks are basically subsidiaries of the United States government, and they don't like Bitcoin because it's competition. Why is this happening? I'll tell you exactly why. The reason that this is happening is because the SEC is upset that Bitcoin and cryptocurrency are upending the scales. They're upset that Bitcoin and crypto are redefining what it is to hold money. They're upset because they're redefining this notion that we have that currency has to be issued by a government. And so that's an attack. Bitcoin is the single biggest threat that the United States dollar has ever faced. You think this whole de-dollarization movement is bad? Bitcoin's way, vastly more dangerous than anything that we're talking about. Saudi Arabia taking oil payments in Chinese yuan. Nope, that is nothing compared to Bitcoin's threat to the market. And the reason is very simple. If you remember during the debt ceiling crisis stream, I talked about how the government is supposed to be an example in all that it does to its citizenry. Our government, if it were an example for its finances, would send you bankrupt, because if you did the same thing the government did, you would go broke and you would go bankrupt and you would have to sell your house, take your kids out of their fancy daycare, whatever it is, you would have to go bankrupt to do it because they run a $1.5 trillion a year deficit. The government, likewise, is not an example of not being controlling, being uncontrolling, being meek. The Bible says the meek shall inherit the earth. Meek is not weak. Meekness is strength under control. That is a different definition than what you're going to read in Merriam-Webster. Meekness is being extremely powerful, but keeping it under control for the betterment of someone else. Jordan Peterson stated the phrase of meekness like this: those who have swords and are capable and ready to use them, but choose to keep them sheathed for the betterment of others. That is meekness. That is biblical meekness, is being a lion who uses his strength to protect his pride, but would never use it against his own. That's meekness. And so the government is called to be meek. It's called to be meek in not a weak way. It's not called to bend over and let people invade us and ransack our country, but it's called to be strong, but to use it for the betterment of others. And in this case, when I say others, I mean other than the government, the citizenry, right? The government's not doing that. It's not being an example of meekness when it does this, and it's certainly not being an example of financial sovereignty when it's running $1.5 trillion deficit. Why is the government doing this? Because when you have a government that steps out of its role of being a good example for its citizenry, then what that government is eventually going to do is it's going to cling on to power and it's going to go down the route of controlling. When a nation is meek and it is humble and it is serving of its citizenry, when that nation has either a king historically or it has an elected government, and it has whatever the governmental structure is that serves its citizenry in a godly way, that nation will be blessed. That nation will have a blessing on it. However, most nations, because they're run by humans, are going to go a different route. They're going to go the route of controlling. They're going to go the route of authoritarianism. They're going to go the route of dictatorial despotism. And the United States, as much as it was founded on freedom, unfortunately is run by humans. And humans have a tendency towards trying to control others. Why do we get angry? Why do we get mad? Why do we get frustrated? Why do we get irritable? If my 8-week-old wakes me up in the middle of the night, why would that irritate me? You know why? Because I'm trying to hold on to control. Like, no, I want to sleep. You can see this is near and dear to my heart. No, I want to sleep. Go to bed. Be quiet. Praise God, I've not gotten. But why do we get angry? Why do we get authoritarian? Why do we get like that? It's because we're trying to hold on to control. And governments that realize control is slipping out of their hands, they turn authoritarian. And unfortunately, the United States has been having a very unhealthy dose of authoritarianism over the last several years, over the last several decades, over the last century. And so the reason that the SEC is coming after, again, remember, we talked about what happened, now we're talking about why this happened. The reason that the SEC and the United States government at large is going after cryptocurrencies, by the way, the SEC is not just the one going after crypto. The United States federal government's going after the cryptocurrency and letting the SEC be the fall guy. Let's just make that clear. The U.S. government doesn't like Bitcoin, and the SEC is the fall guy. You see these horrible, just terrible movies that you should never watch, and you got like the mob boss that sends some rookie to go and off the guy so that he goes to jail and the mob boss gets away from it. That's what the government's doing right now. The government's the mob, and they sent the SEC to be the fall guy so that everybody get mad at Gary Gensler. Gary Gensler is the fall guy, just so you know. This is the U.S. government attacking Bitcoin. And we should not forget that, because that's part of the game. That's part of the play, is for us to not realize that it's the government doing it. The government cannot have Bitcoin succeeding because it undermines what the government is doing. And the reason that I brought up the concept of the United States government supposing to be the example is because they are not. The United States government is not an example of financially sovereign principles, that being, spending less money than you make, being a good steward of your accounting, not letting money disappear into the ether and wondering, I wonder where that $30 billion went. I don't know. The government is also supposed to be an example of meekness. It is also supposed to be an example of a non-controlling spirit, which gives freedom and liberty to others to make decisions as they please, and you pray for them that they would make the right decision, but it's not a controlling spirit. Bitcoin does both of those things the right way. And here's the point. This is the why. The United States government is a terrible example of budgeting and personal finance, and is a terrible example of being meek and humble and not being controlling and letting others make their own decisions for themselves. The government does have a role in making sure that the peace is kept, but the culture is not their job. The government's doing a terrible job being an example in both of those. Bitcoin, I think, is a very good example of both those things. Bitcoin is not controlling. Bitcoin does not tell you what to do with it. You can do whatever you want with Bitcoin. Good, bad, ugly, great, technologically revolutionary, whatever it is, Bitcoin just is. It's going to do its job, and it's going to shut up, and it's going to let you do whatever you want with it. It is very strong. It is unhackable. Literally, is the first, as far as it is the definition of unhackable. Everything can theoretically be hacked, but Bitcoin is the gold standard of being unhackable. You would need probably $250 billion and, I don't know, 100,000 employees to hack Bitcoin. Good luck. Go for it. Try it. Good luck. U.S. government, good luck. Have fun with that. It's not going to happen. It is unhackable. It is digital gold. It has the ability to store wealth into the future even more powerfully than gold, because at this point the inflation of the United States of Bitcoin is greater than the inflation is slower than the inflation of gold. Gold increases its supply by about 2% every single year. Bitcoin's already under that. Bitcoin's already had 19.4 million Bitcoin mined of 21 million. Bitcoin is digital gold. So not only is it not going to control you, not only is it extremely strong, so it embodies meekness, which is wonderful. Bitcoin is ridiculously strong, but it uses it for the benefit of not some technology, of not the founder. It doesn't use it for the benefit of itself. It uses it for the benefit of us. It is extremely strong, and it uses that strong in a meek and humble way for the betterment of those that would use it. That is a Christ-like example right there. I'm not putting gold on the, Bitcoin on the same level of Christ, but there's a meekness built into it, which I definitely admire. So where the government should be an example of meekness, Bitcoin is, and the government is not. That brings a threat to the government. If you ever have two people that are in an argument, and one is acting godly and one is not, which one is going to be more offended? The person that knows deep down, even if they don't want to admit it, even to themselves, that know that they're the one acting a fool. They're the one that's much more likely to outburst. They're the one that's much more likely to act in some way that they shouldn't, rather than the person that's acting God. Now, normally two people are both wrong in an argument, but the person that is reserved, okay, all right, whatever, all right, the fighting for peace, that is the strong person. They are very strong. They could totally shut down their argument because they're right, but they've got it under control, and they're using that meekness for the betterment of the other person, because they know that the person throwing a tantrum, if, me, I'm a dad, my son, my 2-year-old's throwing a tantrum, I'm going to sit there, I'm going to show him love. The United States government is the 2-year-old throwing a tantrum right now at Bitcoin, because the government knows deep down, even if it doesn't want to admit it, that it's in the wrong. And so it has to get angry and get frustrated and get irritable and exert this control over Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. Second reason the government's coming after Bitcoin is that the government knows that it's terrible at finance. It's terrible. It's awful. So bad at personal finance. Of course, in this case, it's federal finance, but it's terrible at financial management. What company, what family could make 75 cents on the dollar for every that they spend and not go bankrupt? Not one. You can't do that. That's like against the rules. That's kind of not the way it works. You run out of money eventually. The law of conservation of mass. That's physics right there. It doesn't work. The United States government makes it work for some time by printing money and taking on debt through the form of treasuries. Whatever. It's the greatest Ponzi scheme in the history of the world. Bitcoin is a great example of that, because Bitcoin also, in the way that it's built, teaches you to be financially sovereign. You know why? Because when Bitcoin is adopted, you're also going to start looking into, how else can I store my value? How else can I preserve my wealth? How else can I stop myself from losing wealth in a way that I shouldn't be? I'm losing 2 to 5% in inflation in the dollar every year. I'm losing 2% inflation in gold every year. How else am I losing money every year that I shouldn't be losing money? Wow, look at this. I could have gotten car insurance for $186 for my 2 cars. Instead, I'm spending $310. Wow, man, I could be spending, $1,600 a month on my house instead of $2,300 just by refinancing. I got all this equity, and I put $50,000 down. I got a lower interest rate because the rates just came down. Fictional, obviously, they're really high right now, but I can do this, that, and the other to save myself $5,000 a year, and then boom, I can invest that and I can grow my wealth. And people are going to start looking into those principles when they look into Bitcoin. When you start looking into some parts of finance, you're going to look into others. So Bitcoin not only is a good example of meekness and serving others, of a sacrificial leadership, it's also a good example of leading a personally financially sovereign life. The government is not an example of either of those things. So when I tell my son, sit on the bench and eat your eggs until you're done, and he throws a fit, which he doesn't do very often. He's a very good kid, but a 2-year-old's gonna be a 2-year-old. And he sits there and he throws a fit, like, I don't want to sit on the bench and eat my eggs. Why is he doing that? Because he's trying to exert control over me. I have control over him, and I've told him, sit on that bench and eat your eggs because you need the protein, right? If I tell my son that and he doesn't like that, then he's going to get angry and try and throw a temper tantrum because he's trying to rein back in control that I'm exerting over his life. Now, he's 2. I should be in control and tell him, no, sit there and eat your eggs. But he, knowing deep down, whether he knows deep down that he's wrong or not, he's upset that he doesn't have control. He sees control slipping away from him. Oh, man, I've been told to sit here. Oh, man, my dad has authority over where I sit. Oh, that sucks. You know, it's a sin nature in us. I want to do it my way. And so we throw a temper tantrum. I've done it too. We've all done it. I'm no better than my son. I am just as bad as he is. I'm just 10 times his age. That's the only difference. The government is in a similar boat. The government realizes, ooh, I don't like this. Control's slipping away from me. It's going over there to those weird cypherpunk people, those weird libertarians, and now they've got this financial tool. Like the libertarians were just this annoying part of the Green Party, not the Green Party, but this annoying part of the Tea Party or annoying part of the independents for a while, but now they've got a $500 billion financial instrument that they can use against us. That's scary, right? It's kind of scary. They don't like it. So we talked about the what, that's the why. Let's talk about the what happens next. Of course, you guys are wondering where Bitcoin goes from here. I think if people realize everything that we're talking about here, and this is an and statement. You know, you got your if-then statements, you got your or statements. This is an and statement. If people realize that this is an attack against crypto and this is day 1, hour 0 of the war for the independence of cryptocurrency, then if we rally together, as Charles Hoskinson said, we put aside our differences, and though we may be 13 states, but we are unified by one cause. We desire freedom. We desire financial sovereignty. We desire to throw off the shackles of a king, a tyrant that's 3,000 miles across an ocean that he would never, ever care to cross. Because why would he ever come down from his throne? If we unite together and we say, don't tread on me, we will make it. We will survive. You know why? Because when you have a movement that desires liberty from an authoritarian government, and is doing it the right way and for the right reasons. And this is what I want to say from a leadership position in this industry. When it does it with a sense of meekness, has strength, but it uses that strength for the betterment of others, not to make itself better, not for making itself rich. Because if our goal with Bitcoin is to enrich ourselves and to make the government poor, then we're not living in a Christ-like way. We don't want to hate the government. We don't want to hate what they're doing. We might hate what they're doing, but we don't want to hate them. We don't want to hate the people in the government. We want to serve them. We don't want to condemn them and say, you jerk, you moron, you have no idea what you're doing. We should say, oh my gosh, I feel so bad for that guy in the SEC because he doesn't realize, like he's got this big pedestal right now, but I feel bad for him because he's missing out on this amazing technology. And we got to fight back against the ideas and sometimes against the people. But realize that there's a soul on the other end of that fight that needs the gospel, but also needs the message that Bitcoin can bring him. Right? So let's not hate the person. We might not like the action, but do not hate the person. That's not going to get us anywhere. If we rally together around the right cause, we'll be okay. And if people continue to realize that, then I think Bitcoin will do all right. Bitcoin's trading at 26,000 right now. Dropped down to 25,236. That was a price target I thought we were going to go to anyway, so we dropped down there. Great, fine and dandy. Bitcoin's already kind of recovered. You know, the other cryptocurrencies, especially the ones that were listed in the litigation, such as Cardano and whatnot, they might suffer a little bit more because now there's legal precedent that they are securities. But the SEC's time of ruling by pen stroke is not going to last forever. What happens next? How low can Bitcoin go? Bitcoin could go all the way down to $20,000, guys, just as we said yesterday. It doesn't really change a whole lot, just changes the likelihoods of what could happen. Bitcoin could go all the way down to $20,000, down to the CME futures gap. The other altcoins, especially the ones listed right in the complaint, here, you know, Sol, ADA, Matic, BNB, etc. All of them could drop farther, especially as we see these cases drag on. But guys, just keep in mind that this is going to be the kind of thing that's not going to take a day to work out, a week to work out, a month to work out. This will probably be a series of cases that'll last over a year. So we're going to pay close attention to these. These are going to be major, major, major cases. And this is the Ripple lawsuit on steroids. 10 times, 100 times, really, the size of what we were dealing with before. So how far can Bitcoin drop? I think at this point, Bitcoin should be considered to be in a state of flux. I would be very careful about going into a long right now, especially considering we have more than likely bearish CPI data coming out in a week and probably a bearish effective federal funds rate hike coming out on June 14th. I'd be very careful of buying right now, but the thing is, I'd also be very careful of shorting. I would call this a no trade zone. I'd say this is a place to be opportunistic. If you see Bitcoin drop, just flash crash down to 20K, yeah, maybe buy. If you see Bitcoin just go through a massive rally, I'd be careful about jumping into that rally because you don't know that Bitcoin is actually throwing off the shackles of this crash yet. And also the other thing to keep in mind is that the SEC has shown that they can bring out multiple lawsuits and stagger them. It's very possible that the SEC could come out with another lawsuit in 2 weeks, right as Bitcoin's starting to rally, and they do it specifically for market manipulation purposes. That could happen. They brought out the BNB lawsuit. Bitcoin dropped. After it already dropped, they brought out the Coinbase lawsuit the next day, this morning. It's very possible they could stagger them for the purpose of hurting the market. I wouldn't put it past the SEC. So guys, just realize one thing. This is my most important takeaway. This is what I want you guys to take away from this. The government is threatened by cryptocurrency. That means that they recognize that crypto has power. Let me just say that again. The government is threatened by cryptocurrency, and that means they realize that cryptocurrency has power. To be threatened by something is to acknowledge that something else is a threat. If I say that Jaguar over there is a threat to me, then I am saying, if I'm saying I'm threatened by that Jaguar over there, or that lion over there, or whatever, then I am acknowledging the strength of that creature and saying that thing is threatening. It's strong. It's powerful. The cryptocurrency market is threatening in some way to the government. We can ponder all day about what that is, but the fact of the matter is the government feels threatened, which means that we're a threat. There's nothing wrong with being a threat in the right way so long as you're doing it in a meek way, right? Remember what we said about a meek person is someone who has a sword and he knows how to use it and he's willing to use it, but he's going to keep it sheathed for right now for the betterment of the other person on the other end that would be on the receiving end of that sword, right? That's meekness. And so let us walk in a meek way. That'd be my big takeaway for you guys, is let us remember that if we keep building and we keep growing and we keep walking in unity, we walk together as a community, not fighting one another, not bickering over nonsensical matters. It doesn't matter. There's things that are important and there are things that are not important for the sake of having unity. Can you be unified with your friend here in cryptocurrency if they disagree with you on meme coins? I think so. I have a certain opinion on meme coins. Other people have a different opinion on meme coins. I can still be friends with that person if we can agree on the basic tenets of what brought us together in the first place. And that is, Bitcoin is designed to be revolutionary. It's designed to fight in the culture war. It's really the libertarians' greatest tool against the government. And it is a revolutionary tool that can change a lot of lives. Let's remember that. This is a cultural war that just got launched. And this is day one, hour zero of a new era for Bitcoin. This changes everything. This really does. This changes everything. And so we'll continue to explore the implications of that in tomorrow's video. We'll also continue to explore the implications of that in streams upcoming. I do want to read chat really quickly before we wrap it out. Really appreciate all of you guys for tuning in. Let's see here. We had a $100 donation. I want to make sure I get that read. Let's see. Prophet Bear donated $100, said, "Do not be afraid. I might have stumbled upon something in crypto called Jesus Coin. Seems to be the first actual first faith-based crypto community info. God bless Jeb, family, and community. Twitter Spaces Church every Sunday. I speak blessings and health to you all." Cool. Well, I could look into that. I mean, I don't want to endorse anything that I'm not familiar with, but seems pretty interesting. Let's see. Mario Bahoon also donated €2 and said, "Binance and Coinbase under fire. What about Bitstamp?" It could happen any day. That's the thing. Yep, it could happen any day. Gary Gensler looks like Agent Smith from The Matrix. That is really funny. He actually kind of does. That's hilarious. Okay. Got a member chat also from Eye of the Beholder. Said BTC is testing the neckline of a inverse head and shoulders on the daily. Okay. Let me see. Yes, it is actually. That is true. That is true. It's also testing the shoulder line of a massive head and shoulders pattern, so hopefully it doesn't fall through that. Let's read a couple more chats here, guys. A lot of people saying, yes, preach. Oh, man. Okay. Let's see. Oh, we have a $50 donation. Rick4962 said, donated $50, said, "Much love, Jeb. God gave his only begotten for who believes in him will not perish but have everlasting life. Our Heavenly Father, please give us strength over whatever. Our Heavenly Father, please, what over ever us watch over us and please give us strength. I'm sorry. That looks like that was a autocorrect typo. Appreciate that donation. Thank you guys so very much. Somebody's calling me Ned Flanders. I appreciate that. I forgot. I used to be able to do the Ned Flanders voice. I can do Kermit T. Frog or Jordan Peterson, depending on who you're visualizing in your head. They sound exactly the same. All right, guys. Really appreciate all of you for tuning in. We will definitely continue to talk about all this. Please, guys, no hate for each other or for Gary Gensler. Listen, guys. Let's not call Gary Gensler a piece of crap. Let's not call Gary Gensler this, that, or the other. We can call it like we see it. Say, hey, look, this is ridiculous. What you're doing is wrong. I think it is motivated by poor intentions. I think it has an evil motivation. But let's remember that you're not perfect either. And I'm not perfect either. And I have no problem with someone calling me out for what I'm doing, but I don't want to be called out in my basic humanity. I don't want to be called a piece of crap, or I don't want to be called a jerk, or somebody can say, hey, what you did is ridiculous. That's conviction. But let's not condemn. Listen, guys, Gary Gensler is a man in need of the gospel, and he's obviously also in need of understanding the Bitcoin message. He's in this high throne right now and thinks he's got it all together, but ultimately, he's just a man. He's just a human being that breathes air and eats food and walks around and, lives under the sun just like the rest of us. And so let's show him love, even if we vehemently disagree with what he's doing. Hope you guys can get behind that message, because that's the only way that we're going to win in any way that'll ever be relevant in the long term. All right. Really appreciate all of you guys for tuning in. If you did enjoy today's video, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and make sure to sign up for Lux Algo. You can use coupon code JEB30 to get 30% off at checkout with the link in the description box down below. If you sign up for the 1-year plan, you will be saving $472 with that coupon code, because you'll be getting the discount from signing up for the annual plan, and you'll also be getting that 30% discount. Thank you guys so very much for tuning in. Before I go, I do just first want to thank each and every single last one of you for watching, as always, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.